They thought she was powerless. Outside a corner store after school, a group of bullies pepper-sprayed a black girl just for existing, laughing, recording, convinced nothing would touch them. But here's the twist they never saw coming. 5 minutes later, the ground shook under the boots of her father, an FBI agent who doesn't negotiate with hate. And when he arrived, their future didn't just crack, it collapsed. The final school bell had rung only minutes earlier, and the sidewalk outside Ramon's market was already filling with students heading home, laughing, pushing each other, and scrolling through their phones. The late afternoon sun washed the storefront in a warm gold color, but the mood around it was anything but warm. A cluster of students lingered near the entrance, cracking jokes too loudly, drawing annoyed looks from people trying to pass. Among them was Troy Maddox, the kind of boy who walked like the pavement belonged to him. Broad shoulders, varsity jacket, smug grin, the perfect stereotype of a bully raised to believe the world was beneath him. Standing beside him were Kyle and Mason, his loyal shadows who never questioned a single order. They were loud, disruptive, and always looking for someone to tear down just to feel taller. That someone appeared the moment Nyla Carter stepped onto the sidewalk. Nyla, wearing her navy backpack and headphones around her neck, was simply trying to pick up a few groceries for dinner. Her curly hair caught the sunlight, and her soft, calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the hostile atmosphere Troy and his friends radiated. She didn't even glance their way, something Troy took as an insult. "Well, look who decided to bless us with her presence," Troy sneered, stepping in front of her path. "Little Miss Charity case." Nyla froze. She hadn't expected trouble today, but then again, trouble rarely announced itself. "I'm just trying to get inside," she said, her voice steady but firm. "Move, please." Kyle let out a mocking laugh. "Hear that? She thinks she can tell you what to do." Troy leaned closer, so close she could smell the artificial mint of his cheap gum. "What's the rush? Market doesn't close for hours. Or do you people have special shopping hours now?" There it was, the coded racism, delivered with casual cruelty. Nyla felt heat rising in her chest, but she swallowed it back. Her father had taught her, never let a bully decide the level of your voice. So she kept her expression neutral. "This isn't worth your energy," she said quietly. "I don't have time for games." Troy's smile sharpened. He hated calm. Calm meant he wasn't in control. "Oh, it's not a game," he whispered, glancing back at Kyle and Mason, who were already pulling out their phones, ready to record. "It's entertainment." People on the sidewalk slowed, realizing a confrontation was brewing. A few stepped back. A few stayed to watch. One or two opened live stream apps without even knowing what they were about to witness, just hungry for chaos. Nyla shifted her weight. "I'm not interested. Move." Troy's grin faltered for half a second, then twisted into something darker. "You know what? You're right," he said too sweetly. "Let me help you." And then it happened. Troy reached into his jacket pocket, yanked out a small black canister, and sprayed a violent stream of pepper spray directly into Nyla's face. The scream she let out was sharp, involuntary, and horrifying. She stumbled backward, hands flying up to her eyes, gasping as the burning chemicals tore through her senses like fire. Her knees buckled. The sidewalk blurred beneath her. Tears poured instantly, uncontrollably. Gasps erupted around them. "Whoa, dude!" Mason shouted, half shocked, half amused. Kyle kept recording, muttering, "This is wild. Keep going, bro." Troy laughed, a cruel, triumphant sound that echoed off the brick walls. "Yeah, cry. Let everybody see the real you now." Nyla collapsed to the ground, her breathing ragged. Every blink felt like knives slicing across her eyes. Her lungs tightened as panic rose. From inside the store, Ramon, the owner, rushed out shouting, "Hey, stop that! What's wrong with you?" But Troy ignored him, pacing like a performer reveling in the spotlight. People nearby shouted at him, some cursing, others frozen in disbelief. "What is your problem?" a man yelled. "Aren't there laws against this?" a woman demanded. Troy only shrugged. "Relax. She'll be fine. just teaching her a lesson. The live streams kept rolling. Comments bubbled in rapidly. Someone yelled for the police. Someone else kept recording instead of helping. Nyla coughed violently, tears flooding her face as she tried to breathe through the agony. Her palms pressed into the rough concrete. Her head spun. Through the blur of pain, she heard footsteps, light, fast, purposeful. A woman in a gray blazer pushed through the crowd and knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, look at me, no. Don't open your eyes. It's okay. I'm here. Just stay still." Her hands were gentle but steady as she guided Nyla's chin upward, checking her condition. "Who did this?" the woman demanded, her voice low, dangerous. Half the crowd pointed at Troy. The woman's jaw clenched. She reached for her phone, hands shaking in fury, not fear, and dialed a number so quickly it was clear her body already knew what to do. When the line connected, her tone changed completely, dropping into a cold, professional seriousness. "Donovan," she said, breath trembling. "It's Nyla. She's been attacked." Pepper spray. Right in front of Ramon's Market. There was silence on the other end, heavy, deadly silence. Then a voice responded, sharp as steel. "I'm on my way. 5 minutes." The woman exhaled shakily. The crowd around her shifted uneasily, sensing something enormous had just been set in motion, something bigger than a schoolyard assault. Troy scoffed. "Who's she calling? Her uncle? Her pastor?" He gestured mockingly at Nyla's shaking form. "What's he gonna do? Pray me to death?" Kyle laughed nervously, but Mason didn't. Something about that phone call, something about the woman's tone had changed the atmosphere. No one in the crowd knew the truth yet. No one knew who Donovan Carter was. No one knew the storm that was seconds away. But they would. No one on that street realized they had just picked a fight with the wrong girl and an even more dangerous father. As the woman held Nyla and the crowd whispered in growing tension, the distant sound of approaching sirens began to swell, marking the arrival of the first wave of consequences that Troy Maddox could never outrun. The chaos outside Ramon's Market didn't settle, it grew. Nyla lay trembling while the woman held her steady, but the attention of the crowd shifted to something else entirely. The screens in their hands. Dozens of phones were raised high, recording everything: Troy's laughter, Nyla's screams, the moment the pepper spray hit her face, the cruelty dripping from every second of his display. What started as a few local live streams suddenly split into dozens as more people joined in, eager not to miss the unfolding drama. "Yo, this is blowing up," a teenager muttered, watching his screen with wide eyes. "My phone is lagging so many viewers," another said. The comments scrolled at superhuman speed. "Oh my God, WTF is wrong with him? Call the cops now. This is a hate crime. Someone help that girl. Tag the news outlets. Who is this guy?" But while the crowd hovered between outrage and shock, Troy Maddox stood tall, arms spread like he was basking in applause. "Yeah, keep filming," he shouted. "Maybe I'll go viral. Finally get the fame I deserve." Kyle laughed nervously behind him, but even he sensed the shift. This wasn't funny anymore. The air felt thick, electric, dangerous. "You're trending, bro," Mason whispered, glancing at his phone. "Already like thousands of views." Troy smirked. "Good. Let everyone see what happens when people disrespect me." He flipped his middle finger at someone filming and posed like he was on a photo shoot, completely ignoring the fact that multiple adults were yelling at him and officers were being called left and right. But as the live stream spread, something else began to happen, something far more devastating than Troy's inflated ego could comprehend. A notification pinged, then another. Then, hundreds. Someone had posted a second clip. A clip from 2 months earlier. A clip that showed Troy Maddox punching a smaller black boy in the stomach outside the school gym, shoving him into a locker, and laughing while the boy cried for help. Kyle and Mason appeared in that video too, laughing, recording, cheering. And now, that old clip sat right next to the new one. 2 acts of violence, 2 black victims, 2 patterns impossible to deny. Hey, look," a teenage girl shouted, turning her screen toward the nearest cluster of people. "It's him! He did this before!" "What the?" another voice muttered. "There's another video?" The crowd leaned in, and the temperature of the atmosphere changed instantly. The first video had made people angry, but this one ignited fury. This little monster did it twice? So he's been targeting black kids, and he recorded himself stupid. My God, this is a pattern. The murmurs spread like wildfire. Outrage churned into something heavy, collective, united. Troy didn't realize what was happening until he noticed several people glaring, not shocked anymore, not confused, furious. "Why are they looking at us like that?" Kyle whispered. Mason swallowed hard. "Bro, check your notifications." Troy pulled out his phone with a smirk, ready to read comments praising him, calling him bold, cool, anything to feed his ego. But what he saw wiped the smile right off his face. Racist punk. He should be arrested. This is assault. This kid is dangerous. Unquote. Expel him. Tag the FBI. His eyebrows knit together. What the hell is this? Then Kyle grabbed Troy's arm, voice cracking. "Dude, the old video. Someone found the one with Marcus Owens." Troy froze. "That video isn't real." "It is," Mason whispered. "It's everywhere now." Troy's heartbeat hammered in his ears. No, 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 no. It wasn't even that bad. You put a kid in the hospital, Kyla hissed. "What do you think people are gonna say?" But the crowd didn't need to say anything, their stares said enough. A mother pulled her son closer, shielding him. A man stepped forward like he wanted to confront Troy but held himself back. A group of teenagers whispered loudly, pointing fingers at him. This wasn't fun anymore. This wasn't control. This was exposure. Troy lifted his chin, trying to hold on to the last fragments of arrogance. "Whatever. People will forget. My dad will fix this." But even as he said the words, his voice trembled. Not much. Not enough for anyone but Kyle and Mason to hear, but it was there. His confidence was cracking. The live stream viewers counted in the hundreds of thousands now, with news pages starting to reshare the clips. Hashtags formed, multiplied, and grew strong enough to break into trending lists. Number, Justice for Nyla. Number, Hold Troy Accountable. Number, Stop Hate Crimes. The entire sidewalk buzzed with tension. It felt like the world was watching, and it was. Still, deep down, Troy clung to the poisonous belief that had been drilled into him his whole life. My family is rich. My dad has connections. People like me don't face consequences. So he puffed out his chest and laughed again, though it came out shaky. Whatever. I didn't do anything wrong. They started it. She was asking for, "Finish that sentence," a woman snapped, stepping forward. Troy blinked. "What?" "Finish it," she repeated, her tone ice. "Say out loud what you were about to say." "I dare you." Troy swallowed hard. The crowd pressed in closer, not physically, but emotionally, like a wall of judgment towering over him. And then the sound hit them. A low, distant wail, not the sharp cry of a local police siren, not the whoop of an ambulance. This was deeper, heavier, more commanding. People looked up instinctively. "Is that a federal siren?" someone asked. No way. They wouldn't. They would if it's a hate crime emergency. The sound grew louder, echoing against the buildings like the roar of a storm rolling in. Troy's bravado evaporated. Kyle's face went pale. Mason stepped backward, fear finally breaking through. The woman kneeling beside Nyla looked up sharply, her eyes filling with something fierce and unstoppable. She whispered, almost to herself, "He's here." But Troy had no idea that the second video didn't just expose him. It destroyed every shield he thought he had. As the crowd shifted nervously and the distinct federal sirens grew louder, a pair of black SUVs turned the corner, signaling that the consequences Troy mocked had just arrived to claim him. The crowd in front of Ramon's Market had doubled in size within minutes. Phones were still raised, voices still rising, and the tension in the air had grown so thick it felt like the pavement itself might crack under the pressure. Nyla lay curled on the ground, trembling as the pepper spray continued burning her eyes and throat, while the woman beside her shielded her from the chaos. Then finally the screech of tires. A patrol car swung to a halt, lights flashing red and blue across the scene. The door flew open, and Officer Ramos, a tall Latino officer in his late 30s, stepped out with urgency written across his face. His gaze darted from the crowd to the sobbing girl on the ground, to the smirking boy standing proudly over her. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded. People began shouting all at once. "He pepper-sprayed her. She didn't do anything. That boy attacked her for no reason. Check the live stream, it's all recorded. Arrest him. He's a racist bully." Ramos raised both hands. "One at a time. Back up and let me see what's going on." But Troy stepped forward first, wearing that same arrogant smirk that made several people in the crowd clench their fists. "Officer, I'm the victim here," Troy said confidently, pointing toward Nyla as if she were a broken object on the sidewalk. "She came at me. I had to defend myself." The crowd erupted with outrage. "That's a lie. She was just walking into the store. She didn't even touch him." Unquote. He attacked her out of nowhere. Ramos's brows knit in frustration. He turned to Troy. "Did you pepper spray her?" Troy shrugged. "I mean, yeah, but only because she threatened me. She was yelling at me, getting aggressive. You know how—" "Finish that sentence," someone snapped sharply. Troy hesitated. Ramos let out a slow exhale. He had done crowd control before, but this was volatile racial tensions, multiple videos circulating, a girl hurt, an arrogant teen instigating the flames. He already felt a headache forming. Kyle chimed in quickly. "We didn't do anything wrong. She started it." Mason nodded vigorously. "Yeah, dude, she was like super angry at him." A woman in the crowd exploded. "She didn't say a single angry word. You boys are lying through your teeth." Ramos lifted a hand. "Everyone calm down. I need statements, not screaming." But the screaming didn't stop. It intensified. People were angrier than Ramos expected, and rightfully so. Nyla's cries of pain, the cruelty of the attack, the live stream, the newly uncovered second video. It was a perfect storm. Nyla choked out a cough, her voice cracked and small. "Please." My eyes, the woman holding her, glared up at Ramos. "She needs medical attention now." Ramos nodded quickly. "An ambulance is on the way, just hang tight." But he didn't get to finish. Another man stepped forward, pointing straight at Troy. "You better arrest him right now. That girl could be blinded." Ramos snapped. "Sir, back up." "Oh, now you care about backing up?" The man shot back. "Where were you 5 minutes ago when this girl was screaming for help?" The tension was spiraling. Troy folded his arms smugly. "Look, officer, you can check the footage. I'm sure it'll show I did nothing wrong." The sarcasm dripping from his voice made several people gasp in disbelief. "You're proud of yourself?" a teenager yelled. "You think this is funny? Lock him up already. He's dangerous." Kyle puffed out his chest, trying to defend Troy. "You all need to chill. He has rights, you know." "And she doesn't?" a woman barked, pointing at Nyla. "Everyone stop yelling!" Ramos shouted. But even his voice couldn't cut through the noise anymore. He stepped toward Troy. "Where's the pepper spray?" Troy tossed it casually from hand to hand before offering it forward. "Right here. Want it? Don't worry. It's legal." Ramos blinked. The utter disrespect, combined with the fact the boy was essentially bragging about assaulting someone, made something inside him snap tight. "This is a serious offense," Ramos said with a tone far colder. "You can't just pepper spray someone because you feel like it." Kyle scoffed. He didn't feel like it. She was being weird. The woman holding Nyla shouted. She was minding her business. Ramos pinched the bridge of his nose. Control was slipping. He could feel it. A teenager in the crowd suddenly screamed, "The second video has over 1 million views." Troy's head jerked around. What second video? Several people shoved their phones toward him, showing the resurfaced clip of him attacking the smaller black boy. Ramos saw it out of the corner of his eye, and his stomach sank. This wasn't just an assault. This was a pattern. Troy's face turned red, first with anger, then with a flicker of fear, but he quickly hid it behind arrogance again. "This is stupid," he muttered. "My dad will fix this. All of it." Ramos looked at him sharply. "You'd better hope so, because you're in serious trouble." But Troy grinned. "No, officer. You have no idea who my family is." The crowd booed loudly, voices rising. "Privilege won't save you. Justice for Nyla. He thinks he's untouchable. Arrest him." Ramos tried desperately to calm the storm. "Everyone step back. I need space to work." But even as he spoke, he knew this situation was beyond his control. He could write a report, gather statements, secure the scene, but the rage in the air, the racial tension, the viral videos, the arrogance of the bully, it was combusting too fast. And then the sound came again. Not the wail of his patrol car, not the quick chirp of ambulance sirens, but a far deeper sound. A sound that made Ramos's spine straighten instantly. A sound that silenced the crowd, in a way no man could. Woo, woo, woo. The unmistakable pitch and cadence of federal vehicles. Two black SUVs turned sharply onto the street, moving fast, cutting through traffic with purpose. Ramos's breath caught. Troy's cocky smirk vanished. Kyle and Mason stumbled backward. The woman holding Nyla whispered, "They're here." The storm had arrived. But every laugh on Troy's lips was about to freeze in the next second. As the SUVs screeched to a stop and heavily armed federal agents stepped out, the crowd realized this was no longer a local incident. This was a federal intervention, led by someone far more powerful than any of them expected. For a moment, the world outside Ramon's market went silent, not because people stopped talking, but because the deep, thunderous wail of the incoming federal vehicles swallowed every other sound. Even the air felt different, dense, with the unmistakable weight of authority. Two black SUVs came roaring down the block, slicing through traffic with a precision that made bystanders instinctively step back. Their lights were unmarked, but everyone who'd ever watched a news report knew exactly what they were looking at. Federal. Serious. And here for one reason. Officer Ramos straightened automatically, hand adjusting his belt, eyes widening in recognition. Troy, Kyle, and Mason stared like they'd just seen the gates of hell open on a sunny afternoon. The SUVs braked so sharply that the tires burned black streaks onto the pavement. Doors slammed open with practiced synchronization. Federal agents in tactical gear stepped out first, scanning the area, forming a perimeter with frightening efficiency. And then the back door opened. A man emerged, tall, imposing, completely controlled. He wore a black suit that looked tailored from discipline itself, a crisp white shirt, and an earpiece that hummed faintly under the sunlight. What truly drew every eye, though, was the expression on his face, calm, quiet fury, colder than winter steel. Donovan Carter. Few people recognized him at first, but Officer Ramos did. His mouth went dry. "Oh my God!" He snapped to attention. "Commander Carter, sir." Troy's head whipped toward Ramos. "Commander what?" But Donovan wasn't looking at anyone except the girl on the ground. The girl who was choking on pepper spray. The girl whose hands trembled violently. The girl who could barely breathe. His girl, Nyla. The moment he saw her, something inside him ruptured, something deep, controlled, and dangerous. But his face remained unreadable. Years of federal training held him together like steel beams holding up a burning building. He walked toward her with long, fast strides. Agents followed a step behind, forming a shield that pushed the crowd back without even touching them. The woman who had been protecting Nyla looked up at him, relief flooding her features. "She's hurt," she whispered. Donovan knelt. His knees hit the concrete without hesitation. He placed a steady hand under Nyla's chin, not touching the burning skin, but grounding her with his presence. "Nyla," he murmured, voice low but heavy with emotion. "I'm here," she whimpered. "Dad." That one word nearly tore the street open. Gasps erupted from the bystanders. "That's her father? Wait, that's Commander Carter?" Oh, this kid is finished. She called the FBI commander? Donovan lifted his head slowly, eyes like bullets dipped in ice. Who did this to my daughter? The question wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It reverberated through the street like a warning shot before a war. Officer Ramos swallowed hard and pointed at Troy without hesitation. Sir, it was him! Troy's complexion drained to a shade that almost didn't match human skin anymore. Wait. Hold on. What is going on? Donovan rose to his full height, and the temperature of the world seemed to drop 5 degrees. Ramos stepped forward quickly. Commander Carter, I apologize. We arrived late, but we have live footage, eyewitnesses, and a viral video. Donovan held up one hand. Ramos stopped instantly. The federal agent stiffened. Even the crowd fell silent, as if sound itself obeyed him. Only Donovan moved slow, controlled, powerful. He took 2 steps toward Troy, and that was enough to make Troy step back in pure panic. Sir, please, Troy stammered, hands shaking. I didn't know she was your daughter. Donovan's voice cut him off like a blade. You didn't need to know that. Troy froze. You pepper-sprayed a defenseless girl, Donovan continued, while laughing. You did it because you thought you could. You did it because you enjoy hurting people. No, I didn't. You did, Donovan repeated, because you believed there would be no consequences. The crowd murmured in agreement. The tension felt like a ticking bomb. Ramos stepped closer. Commander Carter, I assure you, we'll handle this. Donovan looked at him, not unkindly, but with authority that could crush a mountain. This is now a federal matter. Ramos nodded instantly. Understood. Troy's breathing hitched. Federal? For what? It was just a hate crime. Donovan finished. Kyle and Mason looked like they might collapse. Mason muttered, We're going to jail. We're actually going to jail. Troy tried a different tactic. My dad's a major donor. He knows half the city council. You can't just. Donovan's eyes narrowed with a cold that could frost metal. Your father doesn't outrank me. Someone in the crowd whispered, He's dead. That boy is dead. Another murmured, This is justice. The tactical team stepped closer around Troy, and panic spread across his face like wildfire. But Donovan wasn't done. He pointed at the convenience store. I want the camera footage from inside. Every angle, every second. Ramos nodded. Yes, sir. I'll get the owner. Donovan turned to his lead agent. Download all publicly posted videos. Freeze every live stream. Secure every device with first-hand footage. Yes, Commander. The street transformed into a crime scene in seconds. Federal agents moved with surgical precision. Locals stepped back, watching with awe and fear. The bullies huddled together, trembling. Donovan looked down at his daughter once more. Her breaths were shallow. Her face burned red and wet with painful tears. His jaw clenched. This ends today, he said quietly. Only Nyla heard him. Only she needed to. He straightened and faced the bullies again, his voice calm and deadly. Go stand where I can see you. No shouting, no threats, just pure command. Troy obeyed without resistance. His bravado had evaporated completely, and from that moment on, the game shifted forever. As Donovan strode toward the market to pull its surveillance footage, the agents closed in on Troy, setting the stage for the next revelation hidden inside the cameras. Inside Ramon's market, the air felt drastically different from the chaos outside. The sliding doors closed behind Donovan, muting the distant noise of the crowd and Troy's panicked breathing. The store smelled of detergent, old wood, and warm bread, but none of that softened Donovan's expression. The owner, Mr. Ramon, stood nervously near the counter, wiping his hands on his apron. His eyes darted between Donovan's cold stare and the row of security monitors mounted on the wall. Commander Carter, sir, he stammered. I didn't know it was your daughter out there. I'm so sorry. I'll help however I can. Donovan nodded once. I need all your footage, inside, outside, every camera. Yes, of course, right away, Ramon said, hurrying behind the counter. Officer Ramos entered seconds later, sweat on his brow from the tense scene outside. "Commander, I've secured the area. Federal agents are controlling the perimeter." "Good," Donovan replied, not taking his eyes off the monitors. "We're about to confirm intent." Ramos stiffened. "Intent? For a hate crime?" Donovan's jaw tightened, but he didn't answer. He didn't have to. Ramon tapped a few keys and pulled up the first recording, the store's outside camera from 10 minutes earlier. The footage was clear, high definition, showing the sidewalk exactly as it was before the incident. Donovan leaned closer. There was Troy, walking with Kyle and Mason, laughing loudly, shoving each other, looking around for someone to bother. Nothing unusual yet. But then, Troy reached inside his jacket. Ramos squinted. "Is that?" Donovan's voice dropped into a deadly whisper. "Rewind that. Slow it down. Zoom in." Ramon did exactly as instructed. The screen replayed the moment in crisp, slow motion. Troy's hand slid into his jacket pocket, his lip curled into a mischievous smirk. He pulled out the pepper spray canister. He twirled it in his fingers like a toy. Then he tucked it back carefully, deliberately. Ramos inhaled sharply. Jesus, he had it ready before she even showed up. Donovan's eyes darkened into something far more dangerous than anger. He didn't react to a threat. He prepared for an attack. Ramon switched to camera, two angled from the side of the awning. More footage. More proof. Troy spotted Nyla approaching. He grinned eagerly. He elbowed Kyle and whispered something that made both boys laugh. Then Troy stepped directly into Nyla's path. Ramos rubbed his temples. This wasn't a misunderstanding. He stalked her. Donovan said nothing, but his silence was louder than a battlefield. Through the glass storefront, the crowd outside roared with tension as federal agents continued pushing them back, not forcefully, but firmly enough to establish control. Camera 3 came into view next, recording from a higher angle. This one showed everything. Troy blocking Nyla's way. Troy leaning in with malicious confidence. Troy grabbing the pepper spray before she even finished speaking. Troy aiming. Troy firing. Troy laughing. A laughter so bright and careless that even the security video seemed to recoil. Ramos whispered, "This kid, he executed it like a ritual." Donovan's face remained unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders said everything. He replayed one frame in particular, Troy pulling Nyla's attention with fake conversation, then raising the pepper spray with practiced ease. "Premeditation," Donovan said. "Deliberate, conscious, targeted." Ramos nodded. "There's no way he talks his way out of this." Ramon swallowed. "Sir, do you need the export files? USB? External drive? Email them to this address," Donovan said, sliding a card forward. As Ramon typed frantically, the store door crashed open and startled everyone inside. Troy, flanked by Kyle and Mason, he barged into the store like he had a right to be there. But the moment his eyes met Donovan's, they faltered. His bravado dipped, his shoulders tightened. What are you watching?" Troy asked, though he already knew. Donovan didn't move, didn't blink, didn't breathe. He simply stepped aside so Troy could see the monitor. The footage played back in vivid, merciless detail. Troy's jaw dropped. This doesn't show the whole context." Ramos barked a bitter laugh. "Kid, this shows exactly the context." Troy's face paled. "I didn't plan it. I swear I didn't." Donovan turned slowly, his gaze slicing through Troy like a surgeon's scalpel. "You are on camera prepping the weapon. Before any altercation, before any words, before any excuse you invent." Kyle tugged on Troy's sleeve, panicked. "Bro, we need to leave. Now." But Donovan's voice stopped them cold. "No one leaves." Troy's breath quickened. "What? What's going to happen to us?" Ramos answered first. "You're under federal investigation now." Troy stumbled backward. "Federal? Over pepper spray?" "Over intent," Donovan said sharply. "Over race. Over a pattern of violence documented on multiple platforms. Over the fact that you enjoyed hurting someone who posed no threat." Troy's lips trembled. I didn't mean." "You meant exactly what you did." Donovan's tone was quiet, but it shook the room. Silence swallowed the space. Nyla's faint groan outside the store was the only sound that broke it. For the first time since the attack, Troy Maddox looked genuinely afraid not of the police, not of the crowd, but of Donovan Carter, a man who could dismantle an entire power structure with a single phone call. And then Donovan's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Washington, D. Director's Office. Ramos saw the caller ID too. His spine straightened instinctively. Donovan answered. Carter, a deep voice spoke on the other end. Though the crowd couldn't hear it, the tension in Donovan's posture told them everything. This was someone high, very high. Yes, sir, Donovan said. I understand. I want to the dam. No. We have confirmation on camera. Yes, under federal statute. I'll take command immediately. He ended the call and slid his phone into his pocket. Ramos swallowed. Sir, what did they say? Donovan turned to him, expression sharpened with purpose. They want this handled under full federal protocol. Kyle gasped. Mason stepped back. Troy's knees nearly buckled, but Troy had no idea that an even bigger shock was moments away. As Donovan walked toward the door to announce the federal takeover, the sound of new sirens approached, signaling the arrival of units that went far beyond local jurisdiction. When Donovan stepped back outside Ramon's Market, the street had transformed into a battlefield of tension. Sirens still wailed in the distance. Federal agents formed a precise perimeter, pushing the crowd to a safe distance while still allowing them to witness history unfolding in front of them. Hundreds of people stood clustered together, students, parents, commuters, bystanders, all buzzing with shock, anger, and a primal hunger for justice. Their phones were raised high, capturing every second. This wasn't just an incident anymore. It was an event, a reckoning. Troy, Kyle, and Mason stood near the curb, rigid with fear. The arrogance that once coated their expressions had drained like blood from a fresh wound. Officer Ramos glanced at Donovan with a mixture of respect and apprehension. Sir, what did the director say? Donovan didn't answer immediately. He surveyed the street, the crowd, the trembling bullies, the tactical agents awaiting orders. Then he lowered his voice just enough for Ramos to hear. They authorized federal hate crime emergency protocol. Ramos's eyes widened. The emergency statute? That means I have temporary operational authority over all law enforcement on this scene? Donovan finished. Local, state, and federal. A wave of murmurs swept the crowd as word began to circulate. Federal emergency? Hate crime? Is he serious? They're going to treat this like a national case? But the murmurs stopped the moment Donovan raised his voice. Everyone remain where you are. Even though he didn't shout, his voice carried with incredible force, sharp, commanding, unwavering. It silenced the crowd, the way a sudden drop in temperature can silence a forest before a storm. Donovan turned to his tactical team. Agents. Initiate protocol FHCE. Lock down the perimeter. Begin identity verification. No one involved leaves this area. Yes, Commander. The agents moved instantly. Red and blue lights reflected off the windows as additional unmarked vehicles arrived. Reporters who had been lingering on the edges of the crowd sprinted closer, microphones raised like weapons of truth. Troy's breath came out shaky and shallow. This is insane, he stammered to Kyle. Why is he doing all this? Because you pepper-sprayed his daughter, Kyle hissed. And because you went viral. And because there's another video, and because— Shut up, Kyle, Troy snapped, voice cracking. Donovan walked toward them, each step measured, quiet, deliberate, like a judge approaching a defendant who had already been sentenced. Troy's knees almost buckled. He tried to look tough, but terror rolled through his body in waves. Mr. Maddox, Donovan said. Step forward. Troy swallowed so hard it hurt. Sir, please, I didn't know she was your daughter. I wouldn't have. Donovan cut him off with a single gesture. This is not about who she is to me. This is about what you did. The crowd hummed with approval. He's right. Make him pay. Of that dozen to died. This kid has been getting away with this for years. Troy looked helplessly at Mason and Kyle, hoping for moral support, but both boys looked just as terrified. Meanwhile, federal agents stood ready behind Donovan, hands resting near their belts, not threatening, but unmistakably authoritative. Donovan continued, "Under U.S. Federal Statute 18-HC 901, I am activating emergency jurisdiction for racially motivated assault against a minor." Troy blinked. "What does that even mean?" "It means," Donovan said, "this is no longer a school incident, or a neighborhood incident, or a disciplinary issue." He took one step closer. "It is a federal crime." Gasps rolled through the crowd like a wave hitting shore. Troy felt the world tilt. "No, no, no, no. You can't do that. My dad, your father," Donovan interrupted, "has no authority here, and his influence will not protect you." Reporters leaned in, capturing every syllable. Microphones pointed forward like hunting dogs tracking blood. Donovan turned so the entire street could hear him. "You assaulted my daughter with a weapon. You targeted her unprovoked, and the cameras show you prepared that weapon before you even saw her. That is intent." People erupted with cheers. "That's right. Lock him up. Finally, justice." Ramos exhaled heavily, watching in awe. Donovan lifted a hand, signaling for silence again. And like before, the crowd obeyed. "Troy Maddox," Donovan said, voice unwavering, "you are now under federal detention pending investigation into racially motivated assault, premeditated harm, and additional charges related to past incidents currently under review." Troy shook his head violently. "This is crazy. You can't do this. I'm a minor. You have to treat me differently." Donovan's expression hardened. "The statute accounts for your age, and it still applies. But my dad knows the chief of police," Troy shouted desperately. Ramos stepped forward with surprising firmness. "Not anymore, he doesn't." The crowd roared. Donovan didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply extended his hand toward his agents. "Take them." Two agents moved forward. Troy panicked. "Wait. No. I didn't mean it wasn't she." His voice cracked into a strangled noise as an agent gently but firmly brought his hands behind his back. Kyle and Mason backed away instinctively, but two more agents were already behind them. "No running," one agent said calmly. "You're required to stay for questioning." Kyle whimpered. Mason trembled. Donovan looked at them with the same icy authority. "You are all under temporary federal custody until we complete evidence extraction and interview witnesses. Cooperate, and this will proceed professionally. Resist, and it will escalate." The reminder was unnecessary. None of them had the courage left to resist anything. As the agents secured them, the crowd erupted into claps and cheers. Parents raised their hands. Students filmed with wide eyes. Justice, something many had never personally witnessed, was happening in real time. For the first time ever, Troy Maddox understood what fear actually felt like. Not fear of getting caught, not fear of punishment from school, fear of losing everything. Donovan approached one last time, his shadow falling over Troy like a closing curtain. "You should know something," he said quietly. Troy lifted his tear-streaked face. "This isn't the end," Donovan said. "This is the beginning." Troy swallowed hard, because he believed him. What Troy didn't know was that this charge would drag his entire future into the abyss. As agents escorted the bullies toward the federal vehicles, Donovan turned toward the crowd just as new vehicles arrived, and a familiar, furious pair of parents stepped out. Troy's mother and father, ready to ignite the next conflict. The sound of screeching tires cut through the tense air before anyone even saw the vehicle. Heads turned. Phones rose. Reporters shifted like wolves catching a fresh scent. A sleek silver Mercedes swerved to a stop in the middle of the street, barely avoiding the barricade. The doors slammed open violently. Mr. Zachary Maddox stepped out first, tall, barrel-chested, wearing a tailored suit more expensive than most people's cars. His presence radiated entitlement, the kind that came from money stacked on top of influence, stacked on top of generational arrogance. His wife, Claudia Maddox, exited from the passenger side, clutching her designer purse like she was preparing for battle. Both parents looked around with outrage. Outrage not that their son attacked a girl, but that their son was being held accountable. Claudia gasped dramatically when she saw Troy in federal custody. "Baby, oh my God, what are they doing to you?" Troy burst into panicked tears. "Mom, Dad, they're arresting me. For nothing." Zachary's face turned a violent shade of red. "What the hell is this circus? Who authorized this?" Officer Ramos stepped forward cautiously. "Sir, please calm." Zachary pointed a finger in his face. "Don't you tell me to calm down. I'll have your badge by morning." Ramos stiffened, but Donovan stepped forward, stopping him with a raised hand. The street seemed to tilt as Zachary Maddox finally noticed Donovan Carter, standing tall, composed, and dangerously silent. His black suit caught the sunlight like polished obsidian. His federal badge gleamed at his hip. Zachary stormed toward him. "Are you the one abusing your authority here? Who do you think you are?" Donovan met his fury with expressionless calm. "Donovan Carter, Federal Commander, Counter Crimes Division." Zachary blinked. His bravado faltered for half a breath before returning tenfold. "I don't care who you are," he snapped. "You have no right detaining my son. I'll be contacting the state attorney, the mayor, the chief of police, every person I've put into office with my money." Claudia clung to her husband's arm. "This is harassment. You're traumatizing a minor." Reporters swarmed instantly. "Mr. Maddox, did your son attack the girl? Do you deny the viral videos? Is this your family's fourth recorded incident? Are you aware federal hate crime protocol has been activated?" Zachary's eyes darted nervously at the cameras. His reputation mattered to him more than his son's morality. He puffed out his chest and shouted, "This entire operation is illegal. There is no hate crime, just a misunderstanding blown out of proportion." The crowd booed violently. "Your son assaulted a girl. We watched the video. He targeted black students." "Enough with the lies." Claudia placed a hand on her chest. "My son would never do something like that." Donovan tilted his head slightly. "Would you like to see the footage?" Zachary snarled. "I don't need to see anything." Donovan signaled to an agent, who projected the footage on a portable tablet and stepped closer. The screen reflected clearly in the sunlight. The clip played. Troy preparing the pepper spray. Troy spotting Nyla. Troy smiling before the attack. Troy firing directly into her face. Troy laughing. The street erupted in gasps again. Claudia's hand dropped from her chest, her face drained of color. Zachary opened his mouth, then closed it, speech shutting down as quickly as his confidence. But Donovan wasn't finished. "I have something else you should see," he said calmly. Another agent stepped forward, handing Donovan a folder. Inside were documents, copies of sealed complaints, digital transfers, and police reports conveniently marked "Resolved." Donovan held up the first page for Zachary to see. 3 previous incidents, Donovan said. All involving minors, all involving violence, and all involving payments made to erase the charges. Reporters surged forward, microphones nearly colliding. Zachary blanched. "You have no proof of that." Donovan turned the document so the cameras could see. "There's a wire transfer," Donovan said. $60,000 to the father of Marcus Owens, the boy your son hospitalized, another to a school official, another to a local patrol sergeant. The crowd exploded. "You bribed people? This family is corrupt, Andres. They've been covering for him?" Finally, the truth comes out. Claudia shook her head desperately. No, that money was charitable support. Community donations." Donovan raised an eyebrow. "Labeled as compensation for incident." Zachary lunged forward, trying to grab the file, but federal agents stepped in front of him with swift, silent precision. "Don't touch federal property," one agent warned. Zachary trembled with rage. "You think you can ruin my family? You think you can take everything from me?" Donovan stepped closer, just enough for Zachary to feel the full weight of his authority. "I didn't ruin your family," Donovan said quietly. "Your choices did, and your son's violence did. All I'm doing is exposing what you covered." Zachary's mouth stayed open, but no words came out. The cameras ate up every second. The Maddox reputation, polished by money, maintained by intimidation, inflated by privilege, was crumbling in real time. Troy looked at his parents with dawning horror. You covered for me?" Claudia reached for him. "Sweetheart, we did what we had to." "No!" Troy shouted. "You said nobody would ever find out." Donovan's voice sliced cleanly through the meltdown. "They found out," he said. "And now, justice will proceed." Reporters pushed closer. "Commander Carter, are the parents also under investigation? Will the Maddox financial records be seized? Does this open a new federal case?" Donovan ignored the noise and addressed his lead agent. "Begin full evidence seizure. All devices belonging to the suspects, phones, watches, tablets, anything connected to their communications." The agent nodded. "Yes, Commander," Zachary exploded. "You cannot take our devices." Donovan didn't even blink. "Under federal statute, I can, and I have." The agents moved toward Troy, Kyle, and Mason, gathering their phones and smartwatches into sealed bags. Each confiscation drew fresh waves of gasps and camera flashes. Claudia reached for her husband. "Zachary, do something." But Zachary had nothing left. His influence meant nothing here. His voice held no power. His money couldn't bribe federal jurisdiction. He sank slowly to his knees on the asphalt as the realization washed over him. Everything he built was collapsing. The crowd watched with a mixture of shock and deep, overdue satisfaction. Donovan turned away from them, directing agents with crisp efficiency. And just like that, Troy's entire life slipped out of his hands. As federal agents cataloged and seized every device from the Bullies, one technician's tablet lit up with a new discovery, an extracted message thread that would reveal something even darker. Inside the mobile FBI evidence van, the atmosphere crackled with quiet intensity. Rows of monitors flickered, casting pale blue light across metal cabinets and equipment cases. The hum of cooling fans underscored everything steady, controlled, relentless, just like the agency itself. FBI forensic technician Lily Warren sat hunched over a workstation, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she extracted data from the confiscated phones. She wore latex gloves and a laser-focused expression. Nothing distracted her, not the noise outside, not the reporters swarming the scene, not even the Maddox family's meltdown a few feet away. One by one, the Bullies' devices lit up on her screen. Troy's phone, Kyle's phone, Mason's phone. She plugged in the last cable, and the system chimed, evidence sync complete. Beginning data analysis. Lily exhaled and clicked into the first message thread shared between Mason, Kyle, and Troy. What she saw made her freeze. She called out, "Commander Carter, you're going to want to see this." Donovan stepped into the van, ducking slightly under the doorway. He had removed his jacket, but nothing about him looked any less formidable. His presence alone tightened the energy in the van. "What did you find?" he asked. Lily rotated the monitor. A text thread appeared, time-stamped early that morning, hours before the attack. From Troy, "We need to get her today." From Mason, "Why her?" From Troy, "Because she needs to learn her place, and I want to make her cry." On camera. Beneath it was a laughing emoji. Beside Donovan, Kyle, detained but temporarily allowed near his phone for identification, felt his stomach drop. His skin turned ashen. Mason, who had been silently staring at the floor, looked up in horror. I didn't write that. That wasn't me. It's in the group chat," Lily replied calmly. "You were part of the conversation." Mason shook his head rapidly. "I didn't plan anything. That was all Troy. He said he wanted to mess with her, and I thought he meant, like, verbally or something." Kyle collapsed into a folding chair, shaking. "We're dead. Oh God. We're actually dead." Donovan ignored their panic. His eyes were locked on the screen, absorbing every detail with chilling precision. Troy's next message appeared, "Let's film it and post it. Everyone will think it's hilarious." Another message followed, "If she cries, bonus points." Donovan's jaw tightened barely, but the technician noticed. She swallowed hard and continued scrolling. Messages from Kyle. "Won't we get in trouble?" Troy. "My dad will cover it. He always does." Mason squeezed his eyes shut. "I told him not to. I told him it was a bad idea." "But you still went," Donovan said evenly. Mason opened his eyes. They were wet. "I didn't think he'd actually attack her. You don't understand what Troy's like if you don't go along. He turns everyone on you. He ruins people's lives." Donovan stared at him without sympathy. He wasn't the only one ruining lives today. Kyle let out a broken sob. We didn't know we didn't know she was—" "What?" Donovan snapped. "My daughter? You didn't need to know who she was. You knew she was a person, and you helped plan her assault." The van fell silent. Lily clicked another tab. "Sir, there's more." More messages loaded. Kyle. "What are you gonna use?" Troy. "Something good. Something that'll burn." Mason. "Dude, Troy. Relax. I've got it handled." Donovan leaned in. "Scroll back. Check timestamps." Lily highlighted them. This was sent at 7:08 a.m., before school even started. Something inside Donovan grew cold. A cold so sharp it could cut through steel. Premeditation. Full intent. Coordinated behavior. He said, "This isn't just assault. This is conspiracy." Mason slumped. Kyle trembled harder. But Lily wasn't finished. She clicked into the phone gallery. "There are deleted videos we recovered." She opened the first. It showed Troy testing the pepper spray in a parking lot earlier that morning, laughing when it hit the air, and made Kyle cough violently. Mason covered his face. "Oh my God!" Another video loaded. Troy. "This is gonna be epic. She's gonna scream so loud." Kyle. "Dude, stop recording. Someone's gonna see." Troy. "That's the point, idiot." Donovan exhaled once, slowly. "Save all of this to the evidence server. Flag it for the federal prosecutor." "Yes, sir." Outside the van, TV crews were reporting live. The crowd hadn't thinned. If anything, it had tripled. And now, dozens of signs were already being held up. Justice for Nyla. Stop hate crimes. Hold them accountable inside the van. The emotional collapse continued. Kyle buried his head in his hands, sobbing openly. "We're done. We're finished. This is prison-level stuff." Mason glared at him. "Shut up, Kyle." "You shut up," Kyle snapped. "This was your idea, too." "It was Troy's idea," Mason screamed. "Everything was Troy." "Enough," Donovan said softly. But the word hit them like a hammer. Both boys fell silent. Their fear was thick, suffocating, and deserved. Lily clicked one last recovered file. A receipt, an online purchase. Time-stamped at 6:42 a.m. before any of the group chat messages. Item. Maximum strength pepper spray. Vendor. Restricted self-defense equipment store. Payment method. Fake ID Troy Thompson. Pickup confirmation. Completed. Status. Ready for law enforcement. Audit. Donovan's eyes narrowed. A fake ID. Lily nodded. And the system confirms it. The name doesn't exist in the state database. He used an unregistered identity to purchase a controlled substance underage. Kyle gasped. That's a felony." Mason's knees shook violently. Troy said his cousin helped him get fake IDs. He said it was fine. He said it wasn't a big deal. Donovan stood tall, his expression like stone carved by a glacier. "It's a very big deal," he said. "And this opens an entirely new line of charges." He turned to the boys. "You thought this would be a joke, a prank, something you could walk away from." His voice hardened. "But the truth is darker than you ever imagined." Both boys trembled. But even this wasn't the full picture. Something far more disturbing was about to surface. As Lily prepared the evidence summaries, an alert flashed across her screen, flagging the false ID used by Troy as part of a broader investigation, widening the case beyond anything the Maddox family could hope to contain. Inside the mobile FBI command station, The air thickened with a tension that only deepened the longer Troy Maddox sat there in handcuffs. The earlier arrogance that once defined his posture had drained completely. Now he slumped forward, wrists trembling, eyes hollow. Two federal agents stood behind him, calm, immovable walls of authority, while Donovan Carter stepped into the center of the room with a folder in hand. His presence alone made Troy shrink back in the metal chair. Across from him sat attorney Marlon Pierce, the local defense lawyer Troy's parents had summoned in a panic. He was sweating through his collar, struggling to project confidence while knowing full well the federal agents in the room outranked every legal maneuver he could conjure. "Commander Carter," Pierce began, forcing a cordial tone, "I want to resolve this quickly. My client is a minor. He's frightened." He acted impulsively. "We intend to cooperate." But Donovan opened the folder and placed a document on the table. The lawyer's words died. Troy stared at the page, barely breathing. It was the fake ID purchase receipt. The agent beside Donovan spoke flatly. "This document has been verified. The identity, Troy Thompson, does not exist in the state registry. The ID number doesn't match any issued format. It is synthetic." Another document landed on top of the first. "Additionally," the agent continued, "the purchase was used to acquire a controlled self-defense weapon, maximum strength pepper spray, classified as a restricted item for minors." Pierce cleared his throat shakily. "Commander, surely you don't mean—" Donovan cut him off without even looking at him. "Your client committed a federal crime before he even assaulted my daughter." Pierce blinked. I beg your pardon?" Donovan turned his eyes onto Troy, cold, unwavering, merciless in their clarity. "Using a false government ID to purchase controlled equipment is a federal offense," he said slowly, so Troy couldn't mistake a single word. "It falls under identity fraud, procurement fraud, and possession of restricted defense items." Troy swallowed painfully. "It was just pepper spray." "No," Donovan corrected. "It was weaponized intent." The room fell completely still. Pierce leaned forward nervously. "Sir, even if there was a fake ID, this is still a juvenile case. We can negotiate a diversion program or—" Donovan slammed the folder shut. Pierce flinched. "This is not a juvenile matter anymore," Donovan said. "The use of the fake ID, combined with premeditation, conspiracy messages, prior assault footage, and racially targeted violence, places this squarely under federal criminal jurisdiction." Troy stared at him, eyes watering. "Are you saying I could go to real prison?" Donovan didn't blink. "Federal detention at minimum. Depending on the prosecutor's discretion, possibly adult court." Troy inhaled sharply, chest heaving. "No, no, no, no. My dad will handle this. He knows people." Pierce wiped his forehead, shaking his head. "Troy, your father can't help you here. This is federal. The FBI has full command." Troy's breath hitched. He can't fix it?" Pierce hesitated only for a second, but it was enough to destroy the last remaining piece of Troy's delusion. "No," the lawyer whispered. "He can't." Tears began streaming down Troy's face. His earlier bravado, the arrogance that fueled the attack, the confidence that came from privilege, it all crumbled in seconds. "This can't be happening," Troy muttered, shaking uncontrollably. "It was just a prank. It was just supposed to make her cry." Donovan leaned forward, eyes locked onto him. "You achieved your goal," he said quietly. "You made her cry. You hurt her. You terrified her. And you planned every part of it." Troy's voice cracked. "I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you did," Donovan said, voice like iron. "And now you'll face the legal consequences." Pierce tried once more, desperation breaking through his professional facade. "Commander, surely we can negotiate an arrangement. House arrest, rehabilitation." Something. Donovan stood up straight, towering over both of them. "There is no negotiation," he said. "Not anymore." A federal agent stepped forward with a tablet. "Commander, we've run the fake ID through the national database. It triggered a match." Pierce stiffened. "A match to what?" The agent turned the tablet so Donovan could see. It's linked to an ongoing investigation into synthetic identity rings used by minors to purchase controlled items, the agent explained. Several of the IDs were traced back to scam channels, and one of them leads to a contact stored on Troy's phone. Donovan looked at Troy. "Who helped you get this ID?" Troy froze. Completely. His lips parted, his eyes darted, his face drained of color. Pierce leaned toward him. "Troy, did someone supply you with the ID?" Troy said nothing. Donovan's voice dropped. "Answer the question." Troy's hands trembled so violently that the cuffs rattled. I paid someone." "Who?" Donovan asked. A cousin," Troy whispered. "He said everyone was doing it. He said it wasn't a big deal. I didn't think." "You didn't think," Donovan repeated. "And now this case has expanded into an entirely new federal investigation." Pierce's face turned pale. "Commander, with all due respect, this could ruin him." Finally, Donovan met the lawyer's eyes. And for the first time, there was something in Donovan's voice, not coldness, not fury, but truth. "He ruined himself," Donovan said. "The moment he decided another child's pain was entertainment." Silence blanketed the room. Troy sobbed openly, now broken, overwhelmed, terrified. His tears weren't remorse. They were the realization that the world he relied on to protect him was gone. Completely gone. Pierce placed his briefcase on his lap, defeated. "What happens now?" Donovan turned to the agents. "Process him for temporary federal detention. Continue evidence review. Notify the prosecutor's office of the expanded charges." "Yes, Commander." The agent stepped forward. Troy jerked away. "Wait, please. I'm sorry. Tell them I'm sorry." But Donovan didn't respond. He walked toward the door of the van, pausing only once to give an order that struck the final blow of the chapter. "Get Nyla transported to the hospital immediately," he said. "Full medical examination. Document everything." "Yes, sir." Troy watched helplessly as Donovan left with the unmistakable knowledge that the man he'd wronged wasn't just a father. He was the system, the law, and the execution of consequences Troy had never believed he'd face. And for the first time in his life, Troy realized there was no escape. Outside the van, as Nyla was carefully placed into an ambulance, the surrounding crowd surged, and the arrival of new officials signaled the next explosive escalation in the case: the media storm. By the time the ambulance carrying Nyla reached Central City Hospital, the sun had dipped low, casting a reddish glow over the parking lot. But the golden hour warmth didn't soften the mood. It only illuminated the truth. The city was boiling. Hundreds of people had already gathered outside the hospital, spilling from sidewalks into the street. Members of the black community held signs: "Justice for Nyla," "Stop racial violence," "No more cover-ups." News vans jammed every available corner. Camera crews stood on ladders to capture the chaos. Microphones pointed in every direction. Reporters swarmed like hornets, desperate for the next piece of breaking news. When Donovan Carter stepped out of the FBI SUV, every camera pivoted toward him. The crowd erupted not in fear, but in respect. "There he is, Commander Carter. Bring justice." Donovan didn't react. His jaw was tight, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion, worry, and the last remnants of barely restrained fury. He had not left Nyla's side until the ambulance doors closed. Now he had a different battle to fight. A line of reporters immediately advanced. "Commander, is it true the suspects are being federally detained? Are hate crime charges guaranteed? Has the Department of Justice contacted you?" Before Donovan could respond, a black sedan barreled into the lot. Doors flew open, and Mayor Richard Halden stepped out, adjusting his tie, sweating more than the warm weather justified. The crowd booed instantly. "Get out! You protected those bullies? You covered for the Maddox family." Halden forced a smile that trembled at the edges. "Everyone, please calm down. We don't need to escalate this situation. The city is handling it." "Handling it?" a woman shouted. "A girl was assaulted, and you did nothing." The mayor held up both hands. "It seems there has been an overreaction online. I am here to clarify. that the situation is not as severe as a roar of outrage drowned him out. Donovan stepped forward. Mayor Halden. Halden turned quickly, relief washing across his face. Commander Carter, thank God you're here. We must talk about de-escalation. Your involvement is making this incident look far worse than it is. That sentence was a spark thrown onto gasoline. The crowd exploded. Far worse? She almost went blind. Your officers protected Troy for years. End quote. You're corrupt. Reporters zoomed in on Halden's flushed face. Mr. Mayor, do you deny previous allegations of favoritism toward the Maddox family? Why did you say the situation is not severe? Are you downplaying a hate crime? Halden stammered. No, that's not what I meant. I only want people to stay calm. You want people quiet, Donovan cut in, voice cold as lead. There's a difference. Halden's face twitched. Commander, this is not the time to throw accusations. We must work together. We did not work together, Mayor. Donovan's tone sharpened, slicing the air. You interfered, reporters gasped as microphones lunged closer. Commander, are you claiming political interference? Is the mayor involved in suppressing investigations? Halden waved his hands desperately. This is outrageous. I've done no such thing. I have always served this city with integrity. Donovan lifted a small device from his pocket, a voice recorder. The crowd instantly fell silent. Halden froze. What are you doing? Donovan pressed play. A familiar voice, Halden's voice, filled the speaker. Zachary, don't worry. I'll make sure nothing happens to your boy. Just send the funds and I'll take care of the school board and the chief. A collective gasp ripped through the parking lot. The reporters surged forward. Mayor, is that your voice? Did you take bribes from the Maddox family? Did you cover up previous assaults? Mr. Mayor, are you under investigation? Halden turned chalk white. No, this is taken out of context. Someone must have edited that audio. Donovan stared him down. The federal lab authenticated it an hour ago. The mayor stumbled backward. Commander, listen, you don't understand. Maddox pressured me. I had no choice. You always had a choice, Donovan replied. And now the consequences are yours. The crowd exploded in triumphant fury. Arrest him. You're done, Halden. Corrupt. Get out. News cameras captured every second. For the first time in his political career, Mayor Richard Halden couldn't smile, couldn't lie, couldn't manipulate. He was trapped, exposed under the harsh fluorescent lights of public accountability. A federal agent stepped toward him. Mr. Mayor, please step away from the crowd. Halden looked like he might faint. You can't arrest me. We're not arresting you, Donovan said calmly. We're removing you from federal jurisdiction grounds. You are interfering with an active investigation. The shame was worse than handcuffs. Agents surrounded him and escorted him away. Reporters chased after them, shouting questions, cameras flashing so fast the whole parking lot stuttered with artificial lightning. The crowd's reaction was electric. People clapped. People cheered. People cried. Poets and activists would one day call this moment the start of something bigger. A demand for justice, louder than any office, any badge, any bribe. Donovan stepped onto the hospital steps, eyes scanning the mass of people. He wasn't celebrating. He didn't smile. He simply exhaled once, quietly, as though releasing a fraction of the weight that had been sitting on his chest. A reporter yelled, Commander Carter, will you hold a press briefing? Another shouted, What does this mean for the Maddox investigation? Another, Is the FBI taking full control of city law enforcement? Donovan raised a hand. Silence rippled outward again. I will address the press shortly, he said. This is a federal case now, and the truth will not be hidden any longer. The crowd erupted again. He didn't stay to bask in applause. He didn't shake hands. He didn't smile for cameras. He turned and walked toward the hospital entrance, toward his daughter, toward the reason all of this mattered. Behind him, the chants grew louder and louder. Justice for Nyla! Justice for Nyla! But Donovan did not turn back. There was still a war to fight. But the battle was far from over. Inside the hospital, Donovan prepared to host an official press conference, one that would shake the entire city and redefine the case forever. The hospital's front steps had become a stage one built out of chaos, rage, hope, and the unyielding demand for justice. Lights from news cameras bathed the entrance in harsh white glare. Microphones crowded atop a podium hastily assembled by hospital staff. Reporters elbowed for position while the crowd surged forward, hundreds deep. When Donovan Carter stepped out of the double doors, silence rippled outward like a wave across water. No sirens, no shouting, no chants. Just anticipation sharp and vibrating in the air. He approached the podium with the steady, grounded presence of someone who had lived entire decades inside crisis rooms, federal briefings, and classified operations. Yet none of those moments carried the emotional weight etched across his face now. A father, a commander, a man holding an entire city's attention. At last, he spoke. "Thank you for gathering here today." The crowd leaned in. Even the wind seemed to pause. As many of you know, earlier this afternoon my daughter, Nyla Carter, was the victim of a violent, unprovoked attack perpetrated by 3 students, Troy Maddox, Kyle Baxter, and Mason Reed. Reporters scribbled. Cameras flashed. Every person present absorbed each syllable like it was oxygen. Donovan continued, voice unwavering. "Our investigation has already confirmed premeditation. We have extracted digital evidence proving intent to harm, intent to film, and intent to publicly humiliate their target. We have also recovered documentation showing the attacker's use of a synthetic, fraudulent ID to purchase restricted weapons." Gasps echoed across the steps. This incident meets the federal criteria for a racially motivated assault. The words hit the crowd like thunder. That is to say, Donovan paused, letting the gravity of the statement settle. "This is a hate crime." Shouts rose from the crowd. "Yes, charge them." "Finally some truth." Donovan lifted a hand, calming them instantly. "As commanding officer of the Counter-Crimes Division, I am officially announcing a full federal investigation into all individuals involved in this assault." Reporters erupted with questions. "Commander, does this include the Maddox family? Will the parents face charges? Is political corruption being examined?" Donovan did not hesitate. "Yes, it will include the Maddox family. It will include every individual or institution that suppressed previous reports of violence. It will include all parties who obstructed justice, whether through bribery, influence, or administrative interference." A collective gasp spread through the media line. He had said the words out loud. Obstruction, cover-ups, federal jurisdiction. Donovan slowly lifted a folder fat with documents, timestamps, bank logs, digital transcripts. "This is the evidence we have collected so far. It confirms a long-standing pattern of violent behavior that was buried through unethical means. More flashes, more murmurs, more disbelief turning into fury." A woman in the crowd raised her fist. "Expose every last one of them." Others followed, chanting, "No more cover-ups." Agreed. "No more cover-ups." Donovan waited until the chants softened, then spoke again. "Our responsibility is not only to prosecute this crime, but to examine why it was allowed to happen, why warnings were ignored, why victims were silenced, why privilege replaced accountability." A low rumble of agreement shook the crowd. "For too long," Donovan said, "certain voices in this community have been drowned out, dismissed, or treated as insignificant. That ends today." Cheers burst out once more. Reporters leaned into their microphones, voice trembling with the magnitude of the moment. "Commander Carter, are you saying this investigation will extend beyond the suspects to the systems that protected them?" Donovan nodded once. "Exactly." A storm of applause and shouts erupted. Some people cried, others hugged. Many raised their signs higher, as though history itself were watching. Then Donovan added, "The Department of Justice has authorized full cooperation with my team. All local enforcement agencies are now under temporary federal supervision for the duration of this probe." This was not just a press conference. It was the cracking of a foundation, a shift in the balance of power. Reckoning. Donovan breathed in once, steady and deep. This case matters, because justice matters. And justice will be served not selectively, not quietly, but fully. The crowd roared so loudly, the hospital windows rattled. Donovan stepped back from the podium slightly, letting the eruption crest. But before he could end the briefing, a reporter shouted, "Commander, how is Nyla doing? Can you give us an update on her condition?" For the first time during the press conference, Donovan's expression shifted, softened, even though only by a fraction. "My daughter is receiving full medical care," he said. "She is strong." Another reporter called out, "Will Nyla be giving a statement?" Donovan opened his mouth to reply, but a nurse suddenly approached from the hospital entrance. "Commander Carter," she said gently, "Nyla is awake. She's asking for you." A ripple of emotion crossed Donovan's face. Relief, pain, pride, all wrapped into one moment too quick for cameras to fully capture. He turned back to the reporters. "This briefing will continue shortly," he said. "But first, my daughter needs me." The crowd softened. Some placed their hands over their hearts. Some bowed their heads. Some whispered prayers. Donovan stepped away from the podium, but before he disappeared into the hospital doors, he added quietly, "And Nyla has something she wants to say." The entire crowd froze, but Nyla had something to say. Inside her hospital room, Nyla, still weak, still bandaged, but awake, made a request that stunned every agent around her. She wanted to speak to the press herself. The hospital's small press briefing room had never held so many people. Reporters filled every seat, lined every wall, crouched in every aisle with cameras trained on the podium. A dozen microphones pointed upward like steel flowers, reaching toward the harsh fluorescent light. The tension in the room was electric, expectant, reverent, holding its breath. Then the side door opened. Donovan Carter entered first, not as the commanding federal official who had just shaken an entire city, but as a father, eyes gentler, posture protective. Behind him, supported by a nurse, walked Nyla Carter. A soft gasp rippled through the room. Her face was still red and swollen from the pepper spray. Her eyes were rimmed with irritation. A thin medical band rested across her forehead. She wore a hospital gown beneath a light jacket the nurse had draped over her shoulders. But despite all of that, despite the exhaustion and pain, she walked with quiet dignity. The room rose to its feet, not because they were told to, but because the country needed to stand for her. Nyla reached the podium, slowly. Donovan stood just behind her, not touching her, but grounding her presence. One of his hands curled at his side, as if restraining himself from simply lifting her up and carrying her away from all of this. Nyla adjusted the microphone. Her voice, when it came, was soft, trembling, but clear. "Hi, my name is Nyla Carter." Cameras clicked. Recorders flashed red. Reporters leaned forward. "I didn't think I would ever be speaking like this," she said. "I didn't think anyone would ever listen." A few people blinked back tears. She continued, "Today, I was hurt, and I was scared. And for a few minutes, I thought I was alone." Donovan closed his eyes for a moment, swallowing the emotion that rose inside him. Nyla breathed in shakily. "But when I woke up, I learned something. I learned that people across the city, across the country, were standing up for me. People I've never met. People who don't look like me. People who don't owe me anything but chose to care anyway." The room stirred. A few reporters lowered their cameras just to listen with their own eyes. "What happened to me?" she said, voice firming. "Shouldn't happen to anyone. Not because of the color of their skin. Not because someone thinks they're smaller or weaker or easier to hurt." She paused, steadying herself on the podium. "I know there's a lot of anger right now. I know people want revenge. They want to see the boys who hurt me suffer the way I suffered." Donovan's jaw tightened, not because he disagreed, but because he wished the world could protect her from ever having to speak these words. "But I don't want revenge," Nyla said quietly. A sudden hush took the room. "I don't want more violence. I don't want anyone else hurt. I don't want this to become a cycle that keeps going and going." She blinked through the lingering burn in her eyes. What I want is for this to stop. For real. Not just for me. Not just for today. But for every kid who's been targeted. For every person who's been told they're less than human. For every time someone looked away instead of speaking up. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. I don't want to punish them. I want to change what made them think hurting me was okay. The words hit the room like a tidal wave, soft, but powerful enough to move the world. Some reporters wiped tears without shame. Members of the community watching from the back shook their heads in awe. Even seasoned journalists pressed a hand over their hearts. Nyla looked down at her hands, then back at the crowd. I'm not brave, she whispered. I'm just tired. Tired of pretending everything is fine. Tired of walking fast past certain hallways at school. Tired of hearing jokes that aren't really jokes. Tired of acting like it doesn't hurt. Her voice strengthened. And I'm tired of people saying that racism isn't real. The room erupted not in sound, but in emotion. Something collective. Something raw. Something that would echo across broadcast studios within the hour. Nyla straightened her shoulders, small shoulders, young shoulders, but carrying history now. So, this is what I want. I want accountability. I want education. I want peace. And I want every single person watching this to understand that words matter. Actions matter. Silence matters. She glanced at Donovan. He nodded once, pride shimmering in his eyes. So please, she said, don't fight for me. Fight with me. Fight for the next person who needs you. Fight for a world where no one has to stand at a podium like this again. A long breath, thank you. When she stepped back, the room rose again, not because she was a victim, but because she had become a voice, a symbol, a spark. Donovan stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on her back for the first time since she walked in. Thank you, sweetheart, he whispered. The nurse helped guide Nyla toward the exit, and as she departed, camera shutters fluttered like wings, capturing the moment the nation would replay again and again. But as Nyla disappeared through the door, a phone buzzed on the podium. Donovan glanced down. Federal court notification. Emergency judicial action issued. The reporters saw the screen light up. A murmur swept the room. What happened? Is that from the federal court? Commander, what does it say? Donovan lifted his gaze, and the storm that followed would shake the city once again. But the consequences for Troy had only just begun. Minutes later, the federal courthouse released an emergency statement summoning Troy Maddox to face the first round of formal charges. The federal courthouse loomed like a stone giant, its pillars tall, solemn, unshakable. News vans covered every inch of sidewalk. Protesters lined the steps. Signs filled the air. Hold him accountable. Justice for Nyla. No more protection for violence. Inside the marble halls, tension built like a pressure chamber. Reporters whispered. Lawyers paced. Federal marshals maintained rigid order. And then, the double doors opened. Troy Maddox, wrists bound, was escorted into the courtroom. Gone was the swagger. Gone was the smirk. Gone was the arrogant belief that the world would bend for him. He walked like a ghost, eyes hollow, steps unsteady, shoulders slumped under the weight of a future collapsing around him. His parents followed close behind. Claudia's makeup streaked from hours of crying, and her hands trembled violently. Zachary looked 20 years older, ashen, defeated, stripped of the political influence he once wielded like a weapon. The courtroom fell silent as Judge Eleanor Whitlock entered. Her presence commanded attention, calm but unyielding, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Court is now in session, she declared. Troy swallowed hard. The charges were read aloud by the clerk, each word landing like a hammer. Count 1. Aggravated assault with a restricted weapon. Count 2. Racially motivated hate crime under federal statute. Count 3. Conspiracy to commit targeted harm. Count 4. Procurement fraud through use of a synthetic ID. Count 5. Obstruction of justice through prior undisclosed incidents. A collective inhale swept through the courtroom. Troy trembled visibly. His attorney, Marlon Pierce, leaned forward. Your Honor, my client is a minor. He is deeply remorseful, and Judge Whitlock lifted a hand. Mr. Pierce, your client's age does not erase the severity of the offenses. Pierce hesitated. We request leniency house arrest until the full hearing. He is not a flight risk. The judge turned her gaze to Troy. Mr. Maddox, she said slowly, do you understand the gravity of the charges brought against you? Troy's voice cracked. Yes, Your Honor. Do you understand that these are not mere school disciplinary issues, but federal criminal charges with long-term consequences? Troy nodded weakly. Yes. Judge Whitlock sat back, reviewing the thick stack of documents on her bench. Evidence, transcripts, videos, messages, financial logs, statements from Donovan's team. Finally, she spoke. Given the premeditation, the digital evidence demonstrating intent, the synthetic ID procurement, and the documented pattern of violence suppressed through bribery, the courtroom leaned forward. This court cannot and will not release you on unsecured terms. A sob burst from Claudia's lips. Zachary bowed his head into his hands. Pierce tried again. Your Honor, please, he's facing an unprecedented amount of public backlash. The Maddox family has been cooperating to the best of their ability. House arrest. No, the judge said firmly. Silence. Mr. Maddox will be remanded to federal juvenile detention until the full trial. The words crashed into the room. Troy's knees nearly buckled. A marshal grabbed his arm to steady him. His breath turned shallow, panicked. Claudia stepped forward. Your Honor, please. That place is dangerous. Zachary lunged next. We will appeal this. You can't do this to my son. Judge Whitlock's gaze hardened. Sit down, Mr. Maddox. Both of you. They froze. Then she continued, voice steady, cutting through the space with surgical precision. Additionally, all of Mr. Maddox's academic privileges, including scholarships and athletic opportunities, are officially revoked pending judicial proceedings. A ripple of shock surged through the spectators. Furthermore, she added, the sealed juvenile records associated with Mr. Maddox's past incidents are hereby ordered unsealed for federal review. The Maddox family gasped as though struck physically. It was over. Every hidden lie, every buried assault, every paid-off complaint. All of it was coming to the surface. A murmur spread across the courtroom, half disbelief, half relief. Troy whispered, broken, what does that mean? Pierce's voice was barely audible. It means, everything you've ever done is now part of the prosecution. Troy's tears fell freely then, not for remorse, but for the collapse of the future he once believed was guaranteed. The judge delivered her final statement. This ruling is not punishment. It is protection. Protection for the community, for the victim, and for the integrity of the judicial process. The weight of your actions will be addressed fully in court. She lifted her gavel. Mr. Maddox will be transported immediately. Claudia screamed, No! Please! Zachary surged forward, only to be restrained. Troy sobbed as marshals secured him for transfer. Every camera in the room recorded their fall. Disgrace was complete. Privilege was dismantled, and justice had only just begun. As the marshals led Troy through the side door, the crowd outside the courtroom erupted in a mix of cheers and emotional cries. Reporters fought to deliver updates, activists hugged one another, and people across the nation watched live broadcasts of a turning tide. The tragedy had become a movement. The movement had become a reckoning. And now, Donovan Carter was stepping into his next role not just as a father and federal commander, but as the catalyst for systemic change. But justice was not finished. That same evening, Donovan convened a closed-door meeting with federal officials, educators, and civil rights leaders, laying the groundwork for a sweeping national initiative on school violence and racial harassment. The FBI's regional headquarters had never felt heavier. Lines of federal flags hung motionless in the hallway. As city leaders filed into the conference chamber, politicians in crisp suits, school administrators with tense shoulders, civil rights organizers with determined eyes. and federal agents carrying thick folders of evidence. They entered quietly, but everyone could feel the pressure inside the room. A historic moment was about to unfold. At the far end of the long, polished table stood Donovan Carter, no longer the furious father outside the bodega, no longer the commander confronting corruption on hospital steps. Tonight, he embodied something broader, someone who had seen the system fail too many times and refused to let it fail again. "Thank you all for coming," Donovan began, voice steady but edged with urgency. Screens flickered on around the chamber, displaying maps, charts, and national statistics on hate-motivated bullying, underreported school assaults, racial targeting, and administrative cover-ups. Gasps moved around the table. One chart showed a dramatic spike over the past 5 years. Another showed the stark disparity between reported and actual incidents. A community leader, Miss Avery Johnson, leaned forward. "This isn't just a city problem. It's a national pattern." Donovan nodded. "Exactly. What happened to my daughter is not an isolated event. It is part of a systemic failure." Several officials shifted in discomfort. He continued. "For years, schools have lacked clear federal protocols for hate crime prevention. Administrators fear backlash, students fear retaliation, parents fear silence, and offenders, especially those with privilege or influence, walk away unscathed." Zachary Maddox's ghost hovered in the silence. Even though he wasn't present, Donovan clicked to the next slide. "Today, we change that." A murmur broke out. "This is the proposal," Donovan said, projecting a digital document onto the main screen. "A nationwide school hate crime prevention and response program. A unified system to detect, report, investigate, and intervene in cases of racial harassment and targeted violence." An older city councilman raised a hand sharply. "Commander Carter, with all due respect, this kind of initiative can't be implemented overnight. It's too large, too expensive, too political." "Political?" Donovan echoed quietly. "A child was blinded on a sidewalk because 3 teenagers believed she was lesser than them. That isn't politics. That's reality." Whispers flooded the room. The councilman stiffened. "I'm simply saying we must be practical." "No," Donovan cut in. "You must be accountable." The temperature in the room dropped several degrees, but Donovan wasn't finished. He tapped the screen again. The next slide displayed testimony excerpts from students across the nation, anonymous victims of racial bullying, accompanied by grainy photos of hospital visits, statements ignored by school districts, and evidence shoved aside by officials who didn't want bad publicity. The pain in the room thickened. A school superintendent whispered, almost choking on the words, "How did we let it get this bad?" Another official said, "This will require federal funding, congressional approval, media transparency, oversight committees." "The backlash?" "Backlash?" Donovan repeated. "We've already seen backlash. It's happening outside these walls. The people are tired of being ignored." As if on cue, a loud chorus of chanting echoed faintly from outside the building. Protesters, community members, and supporters who had gathered after hearing that a major meeting was taking place. Their voices rolled through the windows like distant thunder. "No more silence. Protect our children. Enough. Justice is action." The officials inside stiffened. Donovan looked around the room, letting the chants speak for him. "There are moments," he said softly, "when leadership is not about convenience, it is about courage." A young deputy mayor spoke up. "And what exactly does this program entail?" Donovan clicked again. 4 pillars appeared on the screen. Mandatory reporting protocols for any hate-motivated behavior. Federal oversight for cases involving racial targeting. Protection for victims and whistleblowers. Educational programs focused on empathy, racial literacy, and conflict prevention. A civil rights organizer nodded. "This is exactly what we've been trying to push for years," but others still hesitated. A school board member whispered, "This will expose everything we've been trying to keep controlled." Donovan met her eyes. "Good. Sunlight is the first step toward healing." She couldn't argue. The deputy mayor cleared his throat. "Commander, this plan will place immense pressure on local governments. There will be backlash, lawsuits, resistance from districts." Donovan stepped closer to the table, placing both hands firmly on its surface. "Children are being hurt. Children are being traumatized. Children are being taught that their lives matter less because of their skin color. If backlash scares you more than their suffering, you do not deserve your seat at this table." The room fell into an absolute, crushing silence. Then unexpectedly, Miss Avery Johnson stood. "I support the plan," she said. "Fully." One by one, community leaders followed. "I support it." "Me too. This is long overdue." The city officials looked around nervously as the crowd outside grew louder, demanding action, demanding change. Finally, the deputy mayor exhaled. "All right, the city will endorse the proposal, with federal partnership." A wave of applause broke across the room, not polite, but electric, relieved, triumphant. Donovan didn't smile, but his eyes softened. "Good. Then we begin." He turned off the projector and stepped back. "But before we finalize the program," he said quietly, "there is someone you must hear." The door behind him opened. A hush swept the room deep, reverent, almost startled. Nyla stepped inside. Still healing, still fragile, still carrying the weight of what had been done to her, but standing taller than anyone expected. And as she walked to the center of the room, every leader present realized she wasn't just the victim, she was the inspiration. And the person who inspired the entire program was Nyla. Now stood before the nation's leaders, ready to shape the future her suffering had ignited. The sun rose softly over Eastbridge High School, painting the courtyard in gentle gold. The same courtyard where laughter once mixed with cruelty, where whispered slurs traveled between lockers, where invisible wounds formed long before any camera captured them. Today, the courtyard felt different. Brighter, louder, united. Hundreds of students filled the space, joined by parents, teachers, activists, local leaders, and even national reporters. Signs decorated the railings. "A new beginning. Hate has no home here. Nyla strong." At the center of the courtyard stood a small stage draped in the colors of unity: deep brown, warm gold, and soft ivory. Microphones lined the podium, but they didn't dominate the scene. She did. Nyla Carter, standing at the edge of the stage, waiting to be introduced. She wore a simple blouse and jeans. Nothing dramatic, but to the crowd, she looked powerful. Her healing face glowed under the morning sun, the faint redness around her eyes a reminder of pain endured, not pain defining her. Near the stage stood Donovan Carter, arms crossed loosely, watching his daughter with a mixture of pride, sadness, and awe. He had seen her fight harder than most adults ever had to. He had watched her speak truth to the nation, and now he was witnessing her final transformation from victim to symbol. The principal stepped to the microphone. "Thank you all for being here for this historic day." The crowd quieted. "Today, we begin implementing the nationwide School Hate Crime Prevention and Response Program, an initiative born from tragedy, but built on hope." Applause echoed across the schoolyard. "And the heart of this movement," she continued, "is a young woman whose courage has inspired millions. Please welcome Nyla Carter." The courtyard erupted. Cheers, whistles, hands raised high. Some students even cried. Nyla inhaled slowly and walked to the podium. Donovan felt his chest swell as he watched her steady, brave, steady again. When the noise settled, she leaned into the microphones. "Hi, everyone," she said, voice gentle yet clear. "I used to walk through this courtyard afraid. Afraid of being noticed, afraid of being judged, afraid of being targeted because of who I am." A murmur moved through the crowd: recognition, empathy. "But today," she continued, "I stand here unafraid." Students leaned in. "I'm not unafraid because what happened to me didn't hurt. It did. I'm unafraid because I'm not standing alone anymore." The crowd erupted in applause. Nyla smiled softly. "When I was attacked, I thought everything was falling apart, but instead, something came together. People who never met me stood up for me. People who once stayed quiet found their voices, and people who once ignored hate finally began to see it. Parents nodded. Teachers wiped their eyes. Activists pressed hands to their hearts. And now, she said, we get to build something better. A school where students are safe. A city where justice matters. And a future where being different doesn't make you a target. She paused, letting her words settle into the warm air. This movement isn't about me. It's about us, all of us. Every kid who has been pushed, mocked, or silenced. Every student who has been told they don't belong. Every young person who has ever felt small just for existing. Her voice grew stronger. We can change that. We are changing that. Starting today. Applause thundered again. Donovan's eyes glistened not with sadness, but with pride so deep it rooted him to the ground. And then, right as Nyla stepped back from the podium, a sudden noise rippled through the courtyard. The doors of a transport vehicle swung open at the edge of campus. 2 federal marshals led Troy Maddox across the walkway, hands cuffed, flanked by security. He wore a detention jumpsuit. His head hung low, shoulders sagging beneath the crushing weight of everything he had lost. The crowd fell into a heavy silence. This was not staged. This was not part of the ceremony. The marshals were simply transporting him between hearings, but fate had placed him here. In Nyla's moment, students stared. Some gasped. Some whispered. Nyla turned, eyes following the movement. She didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. She watched calmly, almost compassionately, even though she owed him nothing. Troy's eyes lifted for a second. He saw her on the stage, saw the crowd around her, saw the unity his hate had accidentally created. He broke. His knees weakened, and a marshal had to grip his arm to steady him. The image seared into the minds of everyone watching. Hate in chains. Resilience on a stage. Justice walking forward. Troy was escorted away, disappearing behind the school building. A collective exhale flowed through the courtyard. Long, quiet, cathartic. Nyla turned back to the microphone one last time. Let today remind us, she said softly, that hate might try to silence us, but justice will always speak louder. The applause that followed shook the entire courtyard. Students raised their signs. Teachers embraced. Community members shouted her name. Donovan stepped onto the stage and wrapped his arm around his daughter. You did it, he whispered. No, she said, smiling up at him. We did. Together, they stood before the crowd not just as father and daughter, but as symbols of a story the country would not soon forget. A story not about pain but about transformation. A story not about punishment but about awakening. A story that would shape the next generation. As the cheers continued, the camera slowly pulled back, capturing Nyla standing tall, Donovan beside her, the crowd united, the school reborn. Black screen. A single line fades in. Justice doesn't only punish, it changes a generation. And just like that, justice didn't walk in quietly. It arrived in a black SUV with federal plates and ended an entire cycle of cruelty in minutes. Those boys learned the hard way that hatred isn't a joke, and targeting the wrong person can rewrite your whole future in a single breath. But the real question is, if you were standing there that day, what would you have done? Tell me in the comments. And if this story hit you the way it hit millions, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true justice stories that will leave you breathless.